I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, firing back at an executive order that demands strict water cutbacks in the middle of a drought emergency. Now, Governor Jerry Brown is defending his order. Legal challenges continue over a shuttered nuclear plant in the North County. The state ratepayer advocate now demanding a $648 million refund for customers. It's all connected to the San Onofre nuclear facility. They are blurring the line between circus and theater, the show that highlights the amazing things the human body can do. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off tonight. The director of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Bureau is under fire for holding too few immigrants in detention centers. The number is the lowest it's been in nearly a decade. Joanne Farian with KPBS News partner iNewsSource joins us to explain. Joanne, why is having too few people in detention a problem?
Well, let's start with explaining the purpose of these detention centers. They can resemble prison or county jail. They're intended for people who are not U.S. citizens and who have committed a crime or who are in the country illegally. It's a holding place while the courts decide whether to deport them.
And how many people are held in these centers?
Well, right now, about 26,000 across the country. But a line in a federal law says ICE, now that's the enforcement arm of Immigration and Customs, shall maintain 34,000 detention beds across the country at a cost of more than $2 billion a year. The question is whether those beds need to have people in them.
You mean quota?
Yes, that's the heart of the issue. Some members of Congress and in the past some high-ranking ICE officials interpreted the law to be a quota. In other words, ICE must lock up 34,000 immigrants. And in past years, they've come close to meeting the quota. But there's been a change in leadership, and it appears a change in how the law is being interpreted. We reported this last week, and Wednesday, during a budget subcommittee meeting in D.C., Texas Congressman John Culberson hammered the new director of ICE, Sarah Saldana, over this issue. Here's a clip.
Is it optional for you to use those 34,000 beds in your opinion?
Optional? It's not optional to have them available.
But it's optional whether or not you use them?
It's not optional, sir. We have those, and we will use them to the extent we make decisions that someone needs to be detained. If you're asking me whether it's more important to fill a bed than it is to do it right, I have to go with doing it right, and that is make our decisions on the basis of...
So what happens next?
Well, Congressman Culberson sent us a written statement. He believes ICE isn't enforcing the law, and he says, quote, I intend to do everything I can using the power of the purse to ensure our laws are enforced as written. And Congressman Culberson, of course, sits on the Budget Subcommittee for Homeland Security. Now, people at home can see more on this issue and a closer look at detention numbers at iNewsSource.org.
Joanne Farian with iNewsSource. Thanks, Joanne. California Governor Jerry Brown defended his executive order calling for a 25% cut in water use. Some local water districts have criticized the new conservation regulations. The governor met with business leaders who are trying to stay in the black as the state deals with a fourth year of drought. They represented several industries from golf courses to hospitality. Brown says the conservation goals are attainable and more can be done.
Set our 25% goal. The water board is dealing with the water holder, the water users, the farmers, the irrigation districts. So out of all this turmoil and challenge, we get a lot of innovation.
Water officials in San Diego County are protesting state conservation targets. Missing them may result in hefty fines. Under a state formula, some water agencies in San Diego County could face mandatory reductions between 20 to 35%. California health authorities declared an end today to a measles outbreak that started at Disneyland. Nearly 150 people were sickened in 7 states. 14 of them were in San Diego County. The outbreak started in December and triggered a national debate about vaccinations. Many who fell ill were not immunized against measles. Some cited personal reasons for refusing the shots. Health officials say no new infections have been reported in the past 42 days, which signals the end of the outbreak. Tourism authorities in San Diego and Tijuana have revived a collaboration on marketing. The agreement is designed to bring more international visitors to the region. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero explains.
The San Diego Tourism Authority and Tijuana's Convention and Tourism Committee used to work together. Joe Terzi, CEO of the San Diego Tourism Authority, says collaboration stopped because of the perceived increase in violence south of the border. But he says things are changing now. He says many people who visit San Diego from abroad ask about opportunities to visit Tijuana and Baja California. Tourism officials from both sides of the border signed an agreement yesterday to work together to promote regional tourism, making collaboration official for the first time.
So as we travel to destinations and we're talking about having people come to San Diego, we're talking about, can we travel with our friends in Baja or our friends in Tijuana and have them have us both talk about the uniqueness of the region and how they can experience two countries with the same trip.
Most of San Diego's international visitors come from Mexico and Canada. Terzi says working with Tijuana to promote the cross-border region will help pull in more visitors from Japan, China, and parts of Western Europe. The collaboration will include more cross-border content on each agency's website. The San Diego Tourism Authority will include information on Tijuana and Baja California in its biannual visitor guide. Terzi says the cross-border airport terminal at the end of this year will help, and that these collaborative efforts will help the local cruise ship industry recover. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
A new project adding affordable housing and creating jobs will change the San Diego skyline. Groundbreaking for the Ballpark Village apartment tower started today near Petco Park. City council members approved the transfer of development rights Monday to Greystar. That's a real estate management company based out of South Carolina. The project will include more than 700 apartment units. Some will be used for affordable housing. 58,000 square feet of retail space will also be created.
It's about realization of a vision that was long planned, hard work to get us there, but to be here today to celebrate this milestone, this accomplishment, as we continue to support the revitalization of East Village.
Greystar agreed to a number of items in a community benefit agreement, including offering so-called living wage jobs and green building standards. San Diego's job market has picked up at a steady pace. The unemployment rate fell to just over 5%. That's the lowest the rate has been in nearly 7 years. Since March of last year, the region added more than 40,000 jobs. Key sectors like shipbuilding, scientific research and development, and healthcare and education help drive that growth. Friends and family waited on the dock at the Naval Base San Diego today. They were there to welcome the USS Gary. The vessel returned from a 7-month deployment. It is the ship's final voyage. It's the last remaining West Coast frigate because the Navy is phasing those ships out. Now, the vessel is named after Donald Arthur Gary, who rescued hundreds of sailors off the coast of Japan in 1945. The Gary intercepted more than 13,000 kilograms of cocaine, valued at more than $200 million on its final mission. There will be no bicycle helmet mandate in California, at least not this year. Democratic State Senator Carol Liu proposed that adults be required to wear bike helmets or face a $25 fine. But there was fierce opposition from bicycle groups, and that forced her to change gears. They say that the measure would discourage riding bikes and it would not make the streets any safer. The lawmaker now wants the state to study how many injuries may have been avoided had riders been wearing helmets. A state advocate steps into the debate over the shuttered San Onofre nuclear facility. The Officer of Ratepayer Advocates called on 2 Southern California power companies to return hundreds of millions of dollars to customers. That after evidence was revealed that Southern California Edison allegedly got an unfair advantage. This comes less than 24 hours after a federal judge agreed to consider additional evidence in the case. Peggy Pico explains what happens next.
The U.S. District Court judge said she did not have jurisdiction over the case. KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma joins me with more on the decision and where the effort to get relief for customers is headed. And Amitha, as I understand it, this lawsuit was trying to stop Edison from billing customers for San Onofre?
Yes, Peggy, that's right. The lawsuit was filed by a local advocacy group called Citizens Oversight and a group of ratepayers. And basically, they argue that the $4.7 billion settlement that calls on customers to pay for 70% of the shutdown costs associated with San Onofre is simply unfair.
Why do the ratepayers think the settlement is unfair?
Well, for several reasons. As you recall, back in January of 2012, San Onofre had to shut down because one of its new steam generators sprung a radioactive leak due to tube wear. Now, ratepayer advocates say, look, San Onofre's majority owner, Southern California Edison, knew there was a problem with tube wear before that equipment was installed. And after it was announced that the nuclear plant would be permanently shut down, state regulators, in this case the California Public Utilities Commission, came out and said, we are going to investigate who was responsible for the installation of this faulty equipment.
And what happened? Remind us with that investigation.
Well, the PUC put the investigation on hold after then president of the PUC, Michael Peavy, met in secret at a hotel in Warsaw, Poland back in March of 2013 with an executive from Edison. There, the men discussed a framework for the settlement agreement that put ratepayers on the hook for a lot of money and put an end to the settlement. Now, former San Diego City Attorney Mike Aguirre is representing Citizens Oversight and these ratepayers in this lawsuit. And he says, look, it is not the job of the PUC to negotiate settlements. It's the job of the PUC to be a watchdog, to be a neutral third party. Here's more of what he had to say.
Would you like, if you had a case in front of a judge, would you like the judge to meet in secret 14,000 miles away in Warsaw, Poland at a five-star hotel and work out the deal, which is a one-sided deal in favor of Edison, and not have any input in that at all?
Aguirre says that secret deal-making has left ratepayers with a very large tab.
And I understand Aguirre also filed a lawsuit asking the court to remove then those rates from the customer bills.
He did, and a federal judge ruled yesterday officially that federal court is not the proper venue for this case, that the case actually belongs in state court. Aguirre says he filed the lawsuit in federal court because he believes that Edison is violating the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution by unjustly taking property away without providing compensation. And in this case, what that says really is that, well, what he contends is that the PUC is allowing Edison to charge customers for electricity that San Onofre is no longer generating.
Sure, let's listen.
So the ratepayers, not only did they not get the benefit of what they paid for, the $700 million for the steam generators, but then they had to pay for replacement electricity, which was $300 million more than what it normally would have been. So they had to pay for all of that, and they still have to pay for the entire San Onofre plant, even though it's not producing a single megawatt of electricity.
So it seems the drumbeat is getting louder on this on all fronts for the Public Utilities Commission to scrap the settlement. Tell us, where is this headed?
Well, Peggy, it's difficult to know. A couple of weeks ago, State Assemblyman Anthony Rendon, who actually is chairman of the Assembly Committee on Utilities and Commerce, called on the PUC to investigate how this settlement was reached, and he went a step further. He asked that the PUC compel Edison to release all internal and external emails dealing with the settlement and the steam generators. Now, this week, Assembly Speaker Tony Atkins also asked that those documents be released, and Senator Ben Waso, also a state senator, he heads the Senate committee that oversees utilities, and he said that he thinks that this settlement agreement should not stand because of how it was reached.
All right, well, I'm sure you'll be following this, and I can't wait to hear more of what you find. KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma, thank you.
Thank you.
The mayor's budget proposal is roundly praised for restoring cuts to services. An LA Times investigation leads to government raids on squalid labor camps in Baja. And there's a lawsuit over a suicide in the Vista Jail and a new protocol for at-risk inmates. A coincidence? Join us for the roundtable tonight at 8:30 here on KPBS.
On the Science Desk tonight, blonde hair, blue eyes, and attached earlobes. Now, certain traits are rare because they require 2 copies of a gene. It's one of the basic rules in all of genetics. But San Diego scientists recently discovered a way to rewrite that rule. As KPBS science reporter David Wagner explains, the new technique is so powerful that some experts believe it could wipe out some deadly diseases.
UC San Diego biologist Ethan Beer says it was the coolest thing he's ever seen happen in his lab.
I was speechless. It's hard to articulate the degree of surprise.
The jaw-dropping result? It was nothing more than a bunch of yellow fruit flies. Yellow is somewhat rare in fruit flies. It's kind of like blonde hair in humans. People need 2 copies of a gene, one from mom and one from dad, to actually have blonde hair. It works the same way in fruit flies.
Which if you have 2 mutant copies of it, you have yellow flies. But if you have only 1 mutant copy of it and 1 normal copy of it, you have the dark pigmentation.
That's why Beer was shocked when his grad student, Valentino Gantz, came up with a way to ensure every fly born in his lab came out yellow. Gantz was using a relatively new tool called CRISPR to precisely insert the yellow gene into a fly's DNA. He made sure that gene copied itself onto both chromosomes, guaranteeing a yellow fly. But the modified yellow gene didn't stop there. It also copied itself in offspring, setting off a chain reaction.
When this gets passed on to the progeny, it happens again.
All the babies born from this engineered fly also turned yellow, and so did all their babies. By modifying one single fly, the researchers could turn every fly in their lab yellow within 10 generations, just a few weeks.
It determines the genetic characteristics of all of their descendants. They are all going to be the same, which is, whoa.
If you're scratching your head right now thinking, so what? They turned a bunch of flies yellow, big deal. You should hear how UC Irvine malaria expert Anthony James reacted when Ethan Beer first showed him these results.
He sent me the data, and I looked at the data, and I wrote back, and I said, that's what we've been looking for and working on, and this looks really, really good.
Mosquito-borne malaria kills 600,000 people every year, but James has discovered ways to genetically engineer malaria out of mosquitoes. The problem is, he can't go around modifying every mosquito in the world by hand.
What we need then is something that would move these genes into field insects or wild mosquitoes.
If this chain reaction can spread genes through mosquitoes as efficiently as it does in fruit flies, James says it could be a game changer for countries devastated by malaria. But the technique will not be used in the field anytime soon. For now, scientists say it should stay confined within highly secure labs like this one.
So this is a double door. This one won't open until this one is closed.
The UC San Diego researchers had to keep their flies in carefully sealed boxes, locked behind a series of heavy doors. The facility they used was so secure, KPBS was not allowed inside. But UC Irvine arranged to show us their lab.
These were also designed so that we could have infected mosquitoes in here. So that's the same facilities they have down in San Diego.
Let's say one fly had escaped. The worst that could have happened was a takeover of yellow flies in San Diego. But even that would have been unacceptable, according to Harvard geneticist George Church. He says, think about genetically modified crops. Many people already distrust GMOs in their food, even after extensive regulation.
Imagine the reaction of an unscheduled, unapproved release of an aggressively spreading GMO that flies, doesn't sit still like a plant.
Church's preferred method of spreading genes includes safeguards to prevent modified genes from surviving outside the lab. He says the UC San Diego researchers failed to take that precaution. Ethan Beer agrees that safety is a huge concern.
I do believe that the positive applications of this technology are numerous and will have real impact on human welfare. And I think that those benefits greatly outweigh the risks.
Beer says the domino effect this technique could create would be profound. Scientists just have to set up the dominoes carefully before tipping one over. David Wagner, KPBS News.
KPBS video journalist Nick McVicker helped put that story together.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, the battle for Iraq, an on-the-ground report on the fight for Anbar. That's Friday on the PBS News Hour.
Therapy comes in all different sizes at Scripps Memorial Hospital in La Jolla. Staff members hosted a volunteer party for therapy dogs and their handlers today. Now, these teams volunteered more than 4,000 hours last year, and they made more than 18,000 visits to patients. Staff members say these visits improve the quality of life for both patients and employees.
The pet therapy teams, the handler and the dog, go to the patient's bedside and visit with the patients, provide some comfort. A lot of our patients are away from their own pets and very much miss them.
Therapy dog teams also give staff members a much-needed break. Staff members say they enjoy bending down and petting dogs on their shifts. Scripps Memorial Hospital is still accepting volunteer applications for new therapy dog teams. They have more information posted on their website. The Circus Collective of San Diego is a group of circus artists who present original shows that blur the lines between traditional circus and contemporary theater. Last year they did a film noir circus. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando checks out a rehearsal for their new show, Circtacular Circtacular.
So just make sure it's framed right. It's true. Everyone wants to run away and join the circus.
As a kid, I always wanted to run away and join the circus, but growing up in a small town in Utah, there wasn't a whole lot of options for that.
My eye was drawn to this neon sign that said Kung Fu and Circus Arts, and I just couldn't resist.
That irresistible sign can still be found in the window of the Sophia Isadora Academy of Circus Arts at Park and El Cajon Boulevard. Currently, Danielle Berg and the Circus Collective of San Diego are rehearsing their new show, Circtacular Circtacular. The show will be staged at the Lyceum Theater.
We're excited, too, to be able to actually reach one of our goals of the collective, which is to bridge the gap between circus and theater. And the Lyceum's that perfect combination because it's set up in a half round, so it's like half, like the big top in the round and half theater. So we are so excited about this space. It's really perfect.
Daniel Nava crafted the script that weaves together the specialty of each performer with dialogue that pushes the story forward. In this case, a story about a group of bohemian artists trying to put on a show.
I think we would like to think of it as its own genre. There's a lot of what goes on in this show compared to what you would get in normal theater or what you would get in traditional circus that's its own kind of monster, its own like little creative thing. And so it is something that's not entirely theater, and it's something that's not entirely traditional circus where it has much more ambiguous narrative.
For this show, we kind of came up with our characters first and then just choreographed the interaction between them almost in a more theatrical way than generally you do in a circus performance like this. So we came up with the story and we made the story work, and then we fit the tricks in where it was appropriate.
It's a more contemporary style of circus that leaves out the elephants and clowns in order to focus on the amazing things the human body can do, what Berg calls the basics of circus.
Human beings doing amazing things with their bodies and cheating death, and I think that's something that people always love to see because it gives us belief in our own ability to also transcend our own limitations.
There is something about circus where we're becoming superhuman, particularly when it comes to these acts where we're flying, whether it be on an apparatus or just being tossed in the air. We're capturing some kind of fantastical desire. We've all had flying dreams, right? And so I think when I perform, when I do an act, part of it is wish fulfillment, right? I'm that person who is watching that act isn't just watching what I'm doing. They're with it. They're with me. They're imagining what would it feel like if I were doing that.
Some of the stuff they look like they do is almost superhuman. They're holding themselves in places that most people couldn't, and it's like a special effect, like some of the stuff that you'll see in our show.
And see up close, with performers seeming ready to land in your lap.
When I go to circus shows, too, I feel the same way. I'm kind of like, but that's the best part about it, is to be able to present something that can make someone have an emotion inside like that. To express it means you're doing something right.
Hannah Denham is a contortionist and hand balancer.
A hand balancer specializes in handstands. So I do all kinds of balancing on my hands and sometimes on pedestals.
For this show, I'm going to be doing a partner trapeze act we're going to be basically hanging on the trapeze, and I'm going to be throwing her around and doing some really cool tricks and stuff like that.
But Travis T says the biggest challenge isn't mastering the tricks, but rather staying in character.
It's easy to lose your character while you're hanging upside down, and putting your life at risk. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge.
But when it all comes together on stage this Sunday, the goal is to make it all look seamless and effortless, like it's something even you and I could do.
Part of our purpose as the Circus Collective of San Diego is to make circus a little bit more accessible to people. So hopefully we're able to do that.
I'm Beth Ecomondo for KPBS News.
Circtacular has one performance this Sunday at 7 p.m. at the Lyceum Theater. Taking a look outside, we're looking at for some mild weekend weather here in San Diego. Cloudy skies by the beaches. Look for high temperatures in the 70s and 60s and lows down in the 50s. Comfortable sleeping weather. A mix of sun and clouds in the inland valleys. Temperatures there in the 80s and the 70s. Trek up into the mountains and you can look for high temperatures in the upper 60s, overnight lows down below 50, around 48 or so. And then out in the desert, of course, going to be a little bit warmer, mid-90s it looks like, and then overnight lows around 58. You can find tonight's stories on our website. It's kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back here on Monday. Have yourself a great weekend.